Hello, welcome back to Utility Sports, and in today's video we're going to be covering the NBA draft, specifically with another NBA mock draft here, and this is a Sweet 16 edition. I'm recording this on Wednesday, March 23rd, and notably here, Sweet 16 play picks back up March 24th, which is a Thursday, so this is the perfect day here to really be covering the Sweet 16. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure to leave a like on today's video. Also subscribe if you're new. For those of you who do not know, the NBA draft is literally my favorite thing in all of sports. I cover this with a ton of intensity. I watch pretty much every single little game I can. I try my best to know literally every single thing about these prospects, strengths, weaknesses, areas of improvement for these guys. And hopefully you guys do enjoy today's video because I do put a lot of work into these videos. So now let's move on here into the actual breakdown of what this mock draft is going to entail. First of all, this is not a big board. This is not the way that I would rank these players. For example, the guy I have going first overall is not number one on my big board, but it is currently what I am projecting will happen. And these things change. This is why I said that I'm recording this right before the Sweet 16. If one of these guys goes out and has a complete dud of a game in the Sweet 16 and a lot of areas of issues pop up, then, you know, that's going to change the mock draft. It's going to change the board. And I'm also not including Shaedon Sharpe here. For those of you who do not know who Shaedon Sharpe is, he's a high school star, came into Kentucky in the middle of the season after graduating early from high school. He is NBA draft eligible, but a lot of reports right now are suggesting that he is going to stay at Kentucky. So this mock draft is going to include no Shaedon Sharpe. Now, it's possible he still comes out. If he does, I'm going to look at him as a lottery pick. But in this mock draft, I am not including him. Again, this is pre-Sweet 16. Things are subject to change. And this is based on the NBA standings as of March 22nd, 2022. So as we're currently talking, the Rockets have the worst record in the NBA. So they're going to have the first overall pick in this mock draft. Make sure you guys subscribe for more updates and coverage on both college basketball and the NBA draft. It's funny, on TikTok, I've been seeing some really bad top 10 pick looks for the NBA draft, including Oscar Tshiebwe in there, who's a really good college player, but it's clear some of these TikTok heads don't quite know what's actually going on in the NBA draft. I saw one that didn't include Ben Mathurin in the top 10, which is just laughable. So hopefully you guys do enjoy today's content. This is also a good time for me to plug our own TikTok and also our Twitter. Links are in the description for those, so make sure to go give us a follow on those platforms. And now let's jump into it here. Pick one, I got the Houston Rockets. Again, this is based off the standings, and this team is an intriguing team. They need some more shooting. They rank bottom 10 in the NBA in three-point percentage, and I also think they just need some more flexibility, defensive capabilities. They've been one of the worst defensive teams all season long. I don't think there's any denying that. And, you know, with Houston, when you're playing two young guards, specifically KPJ and also Jalen Green, you're going to lose a lot of games, especially early. The nice thing for them is we've seen some real development. Kevin Porter Jr. has really come along this season. Last month and a half, he's been playing much better as a point guard. And then Jalen Green as well is starting to show some of the flashes that I knew he had in him. So if you're Houston, you're pretty happy about what the future still could hold. You just need to get way better in the front court. And I'm going to go with Chet Holmgren here, forward out of Gonzaga. And I know this is going to be one of those picks that everyone's going to say, whoa, I don't really know how I feel. And there's a play against Memphis that probably gave every single NBA scout the heebie-jeebies. And that was when Jalen Duren backed him down and put Chet Holmgren on the floor. He did get a flop warning on that play, but I'm not sure how much of a flop that was or if he just got pile drive through, because Jalen Duren's a very big, strong player. So there are some concerns about Chet Holmgren, his size. You notice I have him listed as a forward. At this point of his career, I think he's going to have to play the four almost exclusively. He's not as big as Evan Mobley was. I know that's the comparison a lot of people are saying when they're saying don't worry about his weight. He's about 20 pounds lighter than Evan Mobley was coming in. So he's got some work to do on his body. But when you consider what this player is in terms of his actual skills, traits, and impact, he's one of the most skilled players in the draft. I think that's clear. He's a 7'1" player who can handle the ball like a guard, can push in transition, is a really good three-point shooter, and then really is competitive around the rim defensively. Despite some of his strength limitations, he's got excellent shot blocking because of his timing and also his capability to play vertically, which is a real challenge for a lot of bigs to not come down and get fouls. He does have a bad tendency to use his left hand to hook guys, when he's playing on post defense. And that'll be something that they can work out once he gets a little bit stronger. NBA strength training is going to be huge for him. I don't want him to get up to 240 pounds, to be honest with you. I want him to try and get around that 225, 230 mark. Let him be quick, speedy. And if anyone's ever watched him in the defensively in the pick and roll, you'll know why this guy's going first overall. He's special on that end of the floor. So even though there are some concerns here for me, again, I don't have him as my #1 player on my own big board. I do have a big board video up on the channel. It's a little outdated. I'm going to record a new one next week, so make sure you guys are subscribed for that. But Chet Holmgren, I do think, is worthy of the #1 pick, and I do think a lot of GMs and scouts are going to look at him as the first overall guy in this year's class. Pick 2, we got the Detroit Pistons. They've been better as of late. Big reason why, Cade Cunningham. He's been phenomenal the last 3-4 months of the season. Started off a little sluggish, but has been really good ever since. He's a player who's going to put up 28-8 for most of his career. He's going to be a very, very nice player in the NBA. And Jeremy Grant's also had a few good performances along the way as well here. And for Detroit, you're trying to find a guy who complements Cade specifically. And I think here the best player for that is actually guard Jaden Ivey out of Purdue. For those of you who are new to the channel, Jaden Ivey is my #1 player in this year's class. I think he's far and away the best player in this year's class because he's really where the NBA is at. Speed electric guards who can manipulate a defense, can also hit tough shots. And I know some people are going to be concerned about his three-point percentage, around 36-37%. Trust me, there's no reason to be concerned here. He shoots some of the deepest threes in all of college basketball. And this is where the stat sheet differs from the eye test here a little bit for a guy like Jaden Ivey. He shoots really deep threes. So the fact that he's shooting 36-37% on threes with the clip that he's shooting is actually a good sign to me. And I think if he was shooting a little bit cleaner looks, which he probably would playing in Detroit next to Cade Cunningham, that number could be well up into the 40s. So for me, I'm a big believer in Jaden Ivey. This is a little bit of a fire and ice mix here in Detroit. You have someone who can lull you to sleep in Cade Cunningham, and then you get a fast, dynamic guard who can get downhill, get to the rim whenever he wants in Jaden Ivey. I think these two are going to be a phenomenal pairing, and I really love Jaden Ivey. Pistons fans, if you like this pick, make sure you're subscribed. Also, leave a like on the video because Jaden Ivey is going to make that arena rock once again in Detroit. Pick 3, Orlando here. The Orlando Magic, they've also struggled. Another example of just playing young guards, like what we talked about in Houston. Cole Anthony has had a pretty good statistical season. And Jalen Suggs, a rookie. You're not going to win a ton of games playing 2 young guards like that a ton usually. That's what makes someone like Luka Doncic so special, is that he's done so much winning early in his career, specifically through the regular season. At a young age, where, you know, other guards just quite frankly don't win at the rate that a guy like Luka has. But it's okay because the future is still bright here in Orlando, and they've got their pick here between 2 really good forwards, between Paolo Banchero and Jabari Smith. And I am going to go for Jabari Smith here out of Auburn. I think his skill set leans itself to the NBA game a little bit more. He's a little bit quicker than Banchero, which I think is a huge thing here in this NBA draft, because for me, Holmgren's quicker, Ivey's quicker, and Jabari's quicker. And for Jabari Smith, he's got a phenomenal offensive skill set and upside here. He's 6'10", wiry. The comparison is going to be Kevin Durant. Pretty much anyone who looks at him is going to instantly think Kevin Durant. He's not going to be as good as KD, Magic fans, but he's going to be really good. So when you look at what he's going to be able to do, he can operate in the mid-range. He's got a good three-point shot. He actually showed throughout the tournament up until their loss that he's able to play through contact a little bit better than I had initially anticipated, which is a plus for him as well. I'm really high on Jabari Smith. This class is loaded. Very talented draft class. The top 4 is insane. And then I don't even think there's much of a drop-off from 5 to 14. So Jabari Smith, a really good pickup here for Orlando. Fills a lot of their needs, and it's going to be a build-around scorer for this franchise moving forward. Then pick 4, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the team that's really hoping for the lottery to shine on it, because last year, of course, you know, fell to 6, took Josh Giddey. That's a good selection, but they're hoping to land #1 overall picks. That's really the goal with this rebuild. But Sam Presti, your 4th overall, still has a really good option and one that fits his team, and that's, of course, forward Paolo Banchero from Duke. Another very talented player. Duke, I think, is poised to make a pretty decent run in the tournament. We'll see. Now maybe I'm jinxing them and maybe they'll lose in the Sweet 16. But Paolo Banchero is very skilled. He has a skilled-oriented game. Not the most athletic player in the class. But what he is is extremely talented. He's going to lull you to sleep, and then he's going to knock down a mid-range jumper right in your face. And the fact that he has the skill set to do that at this stage of his career already is scary. There's not a lot of 19-year-olds that can win just purely based off of skill set. And the fact that he's able to do that makes me believe that he's going to transition really well to the NBA. Very possible we could be talking about him as Rookie of the Year next year, just because I think he's got a very NBA-ready skill set already. He's going to come in. He's going to be able to score 20 points a game pretty quickly into his NBA career. I've got some questions about if he's a ball stopper. Does he take too long on each one of his touches? Maybe, but he's young. That's something you can work with him, get him into a scheme, get him to play the way you want. I think he's going to be moldable, and I think Oklahoma City here adds a really talented offensive player who actually shows some defensive toughness as well. Playing for Duke, he's played exclusively at the 4 this year, and his size and length has been problematic for teams as well. So I think he's a perfect fit to move into the 4-man position in Oklahoma City. And then from there, you try and build out the rest of this team moving forward. Pick 5, Sacramento Kings here now. And it's officially at the point where Sacramento has a worse record this regular season than the Indiana Pacers. So trading Tyrese Halliburton away doesn't seem like it was the move to get into the playoffs. But what I do know about Sacramento is their GM, Monty McNair, knows how to draft. He's a phenomenal drafter. He's done it really well with Davion Mitchell from Baylor last year. And the year before that, he took Tyrese Halliburton. Those have been his 2 drafts so far, and those are 2 hits. So I'm expecting another hit here, and it's a player I've been high on all process long. That's forward/guard Benedict Mathurin from Arizona. Stands about 6'6", extremely athletic. I'm sure each and every one of you saw his poster dunk in the round of 32. Just got up there and soared and sent it home. But the more impressive thing than just his athleticism is his overall skill set and his ability to impact the game. He had 30 points in that game in the round of 32 with, really taking over the game down the stretch of the game. Hit a logo 3-pointer to send it to overtime, and then really willed Arizona to win from there. He's a talented kid. He's very good in transition. He's a fluid scorer of the basketball, and I think there's a lot of defensive upside here as well. Throughout this process, I've been likening him to a blend of Tim Hardaway Jr. and also Mikal Bridges. This player's special. This kid is really, really good. He's a sophomore. He's taken that sophomore jump that I really love to see. Some of the best players in the NBA go from a kind of iffy freshman season to a really great sophomore campaign, and that gives me a lot of security, not only knowing that this guy's going to work hard based off his improvement from his freshman to sophomore year, but also that he's just a really talented player as well. Sacramento gets a perfect player. He can shoot the 3-ball, gets really good elevation on his jump shot, and he's going to work really well next to Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. Pick 6, Indiana. They're not far behind them. I think only 2 games better record at this point. But Tyrese Halliburton was an absolute steal for them in that move. Moving on from a 2-time All-Star and Sabonis is a tough thing to do, but to get a player of Tyrese Halliburton's magnitude with his age and where he's currently at in terms of contract and everything, they did really well for themselves. They also have Chris Duarte. They still have Malcolm Brogdon as well. But when you look at this team, it's clear, I think, that they need more wings. They moved on from Torrey Craig. They just don't have a ton of wings there in the mix right now. If you're Indiana, you got to be looking for one. And I'm actually going to go with forward AJ Griffin out of Duke. He's the teammate to Paolo Banchero, and only goes 2 picks later because I think he's got a really nice NBA skill set, one that's going to fit in at either the 3 or 4 position. Probably early on play a little bit more of the 4. But offensively, he's going to play into a role plus a little bit on top of that. So he's going to be a 3-and-D wing, but he's going to have a little bit more capability. He can handle the ball a little bit. He can play make for others a small amount. He's very secure in his actions. He's going to get downhill, come to a jump stop, and find a shooter. He's not going to be someone who turns the ball over a ton, and he's going to take smart, good shots, and he's also capable of hitting some tough ones. He's shooting over 45% from 3 this year for Duke. Hasn't had the best tournament in terms of shooting percentage, but he's been really, really good all year long, and I expect that to continue. As his roles increase in Duke, or at Duke, he's had even more success on the floor. So I see him as a high volume, high minutes guy early in his career, especially for an Indiana team here that's looking to add more talent. And I think he has a really nice impact on this Pacers squad. There's some concerns about Johnny Davis, if he could be a fit there in Indiana. Since they're so loaded at the guard spot, I opted for AJ Griffin, even though I think Johnny Davis maybe has a little bit more upside. I think AJ Griffin does make a lot of sense still in Indiana. Pick 7, we got the Portland Trailblazers here. And this is a team that I think very well could look to trade this pick. specifically for a guy like Jeremy Grant, who's playing for the Pistons right now. I think very well this pick could end up with Detroit by the actual NBA draft the day of. I could see this pick getting moved. But with where we're currently at with them, I'm projecting them to have this pick as of right now. And we're going best player available, and that's guard Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. I know he had a tough game in their loss in the round of 32, but Wisconsin was all predicated on Johnny Davis's play. It's not surprising to see them lose when he had a bad game, but they did a ton of winning because of how well he played all season long. So I don't want people overreacting too much to his final game of the season. Now, again, another player who took a massive jump as a sophomore. I do like to see that. I did have some concerns about this, though, because he is a player who's a little bit more liable to streaky shooting just based off of his shot selection and where he gets his looks off. Now, for me, Johnny Davis, I still believe in him as a player. I know Portland fans are saying, whoa, we don't need a guard. We've got Anthony Simons and we've got Damian Lillard. Let's not forget here that you have a defensive-minded coach in Chauncey Billups. Johnny Davis is a very good defensive player. And, you know, the last 5 years, the discussion around Portland has been, can you win with CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard as your backcourt because of some defensive limitations? If you move to a backcourt of Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons, those questions don't get answered. Okay, Johnny Davis makes a lot of sense here still, gives you some size and physicality at the 2 spot, and you go from there. It's all about adding talent. Portland is void of it. I went to a game of theirs in person, and it was one of the worst NBA games I've ever seen. You know, Brandon Williams was a nice find. The rest of that team, though, very questionable. So for me, I like Portland. You know, obviously, Anthony Simons is a good player as well. But Portland here, they just need more talent. You go best player available, and that's Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin. Pick 8, San Antonio. We've got the Spurs here now, a team with 3 first-round picks. So they've got a ton of potential here to add some really good players. And I think the safe one here is going with forward Keegan Murray out of Iowa. Now, I know Iowa got upset in the round of 64, so a lot of you guys didn't really get to see Keegan Murray the way that he probably deserved on the spotlight. But I think he's a really good fit here into San Antonio because he's an opportunistic scorer, and he just has a knack for making the right play, which is a very Spurs-esque type of thing to be. And I think he fits really well here into San Antonio. They badly need a 4-man after trading Thaddeus Young. He wasn't even getting that many minutes for them. But I think the 4 spot's really been what's the weakness on this team right now. Jakob Poeltl, a really good rim protector. I know he was on the trade block, so it's possible they could still move him and maybe look at a guy like Jalen Duren here. But assuming Poeltl's on their roster, Keegan Murray makes a lot of sense. Does a lot of work on the offensive glass, can step out to the 3-point line. He's going to be a good corner shooter right away on day 1 of his NBA career. And he's going to be versatile defensively as well. Moves pretty well, can take bigs, can match up on wings. That's going to be valuable for San Antonio. I think that they're still adjusting to the modern NBA a little bit more than other teams, specifically with how, kind of the 4-man play specifically. So for me, adding Keegan Murray makes a ton of sense. The Spurs get way better with this selection. Moving on to pick 9 here, we got the New York Knicks. And the season just hasn't gone the way you would hope. And now here at this spot, I would consider Jalen Duren because he perfectly fits what Tom Thibodeau wants to do defensively as an anchor big who can switch out in space and really be a problem defensively and also rim run in transition and be a nice role guy offensively. However, I'm not going that way. I'm looking for the next point guard for the New York Knicks, and that's guard Tyty Washington out of Kentucky. Feels like a foregone conclusion almost that he's going to end up with the Knicks. Now, it's a little iffy for me. Tyty Washington's good. I just don't know if he's ever going to be great. I think a lot of people are projecting him to be great. For me, he's got a pretty high floor, but I don't know how high his ceiling is. He's not the most athletic guard, but he is really, really gifted as a playmaker. Has really good feel as a scorer as well, especially in the pick and roll game. He's an upgrade for sure for the Knicks. I think he could very well be the starting point guard going into next season. But at the same time, I do have some concerns about him long-term, how much he really reshapes this team, how much better does he actually make the Knicks. I'm not sold on that yet, but I do see him as a lottery pick, and I see the Knicks taking him here 9th overall. Pick 10, Washington Wizards here, a team that had a big win over the Los Angeles Lakers the other day. Kristaps Porzingis has been playing fairly well for the Wizards since getting traded there from the Dallas Mavericks. And 10th overall, they're going to be looking for a dynamic guard who can come off the bench and fill it up. And that's going to be Jaden Hardy out of G League Ignite. A lot of people have been looking at him as a non-lottery pick, and I don't get it. This kid is extremely athletic, very gifted scorer of the basketball, and is someone who's growing as a facilitator. He reminds me a lot of Donovan Mitchell when Donovan Mitchell entered the NBA draft. Now, is Jaden Hardy going to be as good as Mitchell? Probably not. But I do think that there is some real serious upside here. And for Washington, if you have any concerns that Beal might leave, whether that's through free agency or if he opts into his contract and then requests a trade, Jaden Hardy's going to be your guy in the fold that you want to develop and really build in that backcourt. They need another backcourt guy. Jaden Hardy, I think, is the perfect fit to do so. He's a really nice player. And I think even you have to overlook some of his inefficiencies from the field, and you have to consider what this guy could be. And I think Washington here is drafting a player who could potentially end up being a top 5 player in this class. To get him 10th overall is really good value here for me. And I think it's also a really good fit long-term for what Washington's probably going to have to look for. Pick 11, we got Portland here again. And of course, I went with Johnny Davis, 7th overall. And now here they are 11th. And this pick comes from the New Orleans Pelicans. And I do think it's worth noting with the Pelicans' latest surge, it's possible that this pick maybe doesn't convey. If New Orleans finds a way to win 2 play-in games and get into the playoffs, this pick would not convey to Portland, which is probably the worst case scenario here for the Trailblazers. But assuming they have this pick, I have them going with center Jalen Duren here. This stops his fall. I considered him for Washington. I considered him for a bunch of teams along the way. I think finally 11th overall makes the most sense. He got into foul trouble against Gonzaga. We didn't really get to see as much of the Holmgren-Duren matchup as we would have liked to see. But Jalen Duren's a really nice center. He's very physical, can play around the rim with strong capabilities. Doesn't have the best post set right now, but he's going to be a nice rim running big, and he's also going to be able to hold down the paint defensively. And one thing for him is he switches out into space really well. I think his ceiling probably ends up being Bam Adebayo, which is really high ceiling. That requires a lot to go right. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting Bam Adebayo as like a lock here for what Jalen Duren's career is going to play out like. But I think if stuff goes right, if he gets the right development and progresses really quickly in his career, he could be just like Bam Adebayo from a physical standpoint, hold down the rim, be a really nice paint defender. Now, and he's also got the upside as a passer like Bam Adebayo has. Now, is he going to get there? I'm not sure. But I think the upside is very similar here. And if you're going to be Portland and you're going to look for a player that can maybe change your franchise and really help Damian Lillard win, which is, a possibility yet at this point, Duren's a really good selection here. Pick 12, Memphis Grizzlies here now at this spot. This pick comes from the Los Angeles Lakers. And similar to that New Orleans pick, if the Lakers actually move up into the top 10, if the lottery moves them up into the top 10, this pick would not go to Memphis. It would actually go to New Orleans. So there's a lot to watch here on that pick, but 12th overall, I have him going with forward EJ Liddell from Ohio State. When you look at Liddell, he's a junior player, very, very strong defensively, and I think that's what Memphis really needs here. Another player who can come in and be a nice defensive stalwart for him. It's hard to look at this team and really pinpoint a lot of needs, and that's the reason why they're second in the Western Conference right now. There's not a ton of needs, but when you're looking at certain ways that they can improve, the Jaren Jackson center minutes have been really good this year. So if you want to try and continue playing that way and maybe give yourself a little bit more flexibility, having him play center more often and maybe move away from Steven Adams, you add a really good defensive forward here in EJ Liddell, who's strong, can rebound, and add some defensive versatility as a weak side rim protector. So to have 2 guys now that could really alter shots around the rim in Liddell and Jaren Jackson probably does make the world of a difference. And he's also got a good offensive skill set. Again, a player here who maybe doesn't have the highest ceiling, but that's okay. He's going to come in. He's around the same age as all the other guys. He's around the same age as Ja, a little bit younger than Jaren only. He's going to be ready to make an impact right away. And I think here for Memphis, you can focus your development on Zaire Williams, who's still a young wing that they're trying to make work from last year's draft. So for me, EJ Liddell comes in, probably doesn't have a ton of upside, but doesn't need a lot of development either. Can come in and make a real impact on day one. Pick 13, we got the Atlanta Hawks here now at this point. They've been better as of late. Of course, they struggled really early on in the season. They had a nice win over the Knicks the other night. And here with this spot, I have them going with forward Jeremy Sochan from Baylor. Jeremy Sochan's an interesting player, a very intriguing guy, because when you look at him, doesn't really score the ball well, doesn't have a great offensive skill set. So you're wondering, why am I mocking this guy in the lottery? Well, what he is a 6'9" wing who can guard bigs, can guard point guards. That's really rare. So for Atlanta, a team that likes to do a lot of cross matchups and switching because of Trae Young, they try and hide him as best as they can, even throughout the regular season. To get a defensive stalwart like Sochan just makes sense. They need to get better on that end of the floor. I also did consider a guy like Kennedy Chandler here from Tennessee, who could be a nice long-term backup point guard. It depends on where they're at with Sharif Cooper. He's played really well in the G League. Maybe they think he can be ready by next season. I'm not sure exactly how they feel on him yet, but for me, forward Jeremy Sochan does make a lot of sense. Again, versatility, length, and defensive capabilities is what Atlanta really needs. And to go with a guy like Sochan, who can really help defend 1 through 5, I think it's a no-brainer here for Atlanta. Pick 14, we got the Charlotte Hornets here. And there's no denying that this team is in bad need of a rim protector. They need a guy who can hold down the fort, especially the paint. And when you look at what the Hornets struggle with, and the only criticism I really have of LaMelo Ball is he's basically a revolving door defensively. He gets blown by more than pretty much every other player in the NBA, I feel like. I think he plays off balance a little bit. I think that he's a little tentative when it comes to reaching. I think he reaches a little bit too much. And this pick, if they were out of the top 18, would convey to Atlanta, but since they are still in the lottery in the top 18, this is their pick, and they're going to go with center Walker Kessler from Auburn. One of the best rim protectors in the entire nation, averaging about 5 blocks a game right now. Auburn, of course, got bounced a little earlier than I think they would have liked, but at the end of the day, he's a very nice rim protecting prospect, plays within himself. He's going to take a bunch of dunks. He's going to play to his game. And maybe there's a little bit of hope that he can step out behind the three-point line at some point. You know, they took Kai Jones last year, and I really like him as well. But I think Walker Kessler is just a different type of rim protector, and one that I would rely on a little bit more as a defensive anchor than Kai Jones. But I do think that Kai Jones, Walker Kessler could coexist moving forward. And I also think this gives them some more trade flexibility if they look to make a consolidation type move, which I do think makes some sense as well. Moving on now to pick 15, we've got the Oklahoma City Thunder yet again. This pick comes from the Los Angeles Clippers from the massive Paul George trade a few years ago. And now here 15th overall, after going out and getting Paolo Banchero in the top 4, they find themselves in a spot where they can take a big swing on a guy who has massive potential if everything goes right. And that is the young forward/guard, Ousmane Dieng, who's playing for the New Zealand Breakers. Welcome him to the first round here. And he's a player you're going to start hearing a lot more about. He's a 6'10" point forward who has very good playmaking feel and is someone who is very capable of getting others involved. Now, I know you might be saying, well, they have Josh Giddey. They don't really need a guard. They've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I have an inkling here that I think Sam Presti's looking for a hyper ball movement oriented lineup. And he's got his killer now in Paolo Banchero. So he's got his half-court scorers in Banchero and Shai. You get other guys who are connector-type players in Josh Giddey and Ousmane Dieng. And this team could be really dangerous really quickly here. They need to get better in the front court, and they need to get bigger. You could look at a lineup here of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at about 6'6", Josh Giddey at about 6'8". You have Paolo Banchero at 6'10", Ousmane Dieng at 6'10", and then you have to figure out the center position yet. But there's a lot of ways that they could go about doing that. They have money in free agency. If they want to bring in a rim protecting big, that could make some sense as well. Now, I think Dieng, maybe not the most NBA ready guy, but I think he's oozing with potential here. So for Oklahoma City, they took a guy last year from the NBL in Josh Giddey, who was playing really great. And now they do it again this year with Ousmane Dieng. After already grabbing Paolo Banchero, I feel like they're playing with house money here. And to take a guy with massive upside, this is what Sam Presti's going to look to do with these selections. He's going to take some big-time boomer bust guys, and Ousmane Dieng falls into that category. Very talented player. It just comes down to if he can make it work in the NBA, if he's going to be enough of a scorer to really, make magic happen. And I think with his size, there's some real capability here that Oklahoma City becomes a tough cover just with how big they can be and also how talented they can be as passers. Pick 16 now, we got the Houston Rockets. This pick comes from the Brooklyn Nets. It's a little bit higher than I think anyone would have guessed when they made the James Harden trade last season. But of course, Harden didn't stick there in Brooklyn. Moved on to Philly, and now I think Houston's reaping the benefits of that with the 16th overall selection here. And they're going to be looking at this point to try and bring in a little bit more shooting. We brought in Chet Holmgren for them, who's a big who can shoot the ball. They rank bottom 10 in the NBA right now in three-point percentage. They need to get better at shooting the three ball. And we're actually going to go with Ousmane Dieng's teammate there in New Zealand. And that, of course, is guard Hugo Bassan, his 6'5" combo guard. I know last year they took Josh Christopher, They don't specifically need a guard. But what I do think they need is just more shooting. And there's in reality, Hugo Beson's one of the best shooters in this year's class, if not the best shooter. He is going to be really good on movement. He's also someone who, as a catch and shoot three-point shooter, is going to shoot a very high clip. Again, another player, I've been projecting him right around this spot all year long. I said he's very well worth a lottery selection if he goes to the right team. And at 6'5", I mean, he's got some good playmaking feel as well. I kind of liken him to Duncan Robinson, but I think he's got a little bit more ball handling capabilities, a little bit more comfortable being the guy. Now, is this the biggest need for Houston? No, but they still have Christian Wood. They could look to move him. I'm not exactly sure what the final idea here for this roster is yet for Raphael Stone. He's got his guards, but at the same time, I think you have to take a player who helps you here, and that is, of course, Hugo Besson. I love this kid. I am very high on him. Again, another player here, him and Ousmane Dieng. I am ahead on these two guys, okay, for the New Zealand Breakers. You guys have to trust me on this. You're going to start hearing way more about these guys, specifically as we get closer to the NBA draft. And you're going to be saying, wow, where did I hear this from again? You heard it from Utility Sports. You heard it from me here. Hugo Besson, a top 20 pick for sure. Ousmane Dieng, I think very well could fall in that top 20 as well. Pick 17, we got San Antonio Spurs here. This pick comes from the Toronto Raptors in the Thad Young trade. And here now, I'm going with forward Tari Eason out of LSU, a player I'm not in love with. But again, if you're looking to upgrade your wings, get a little bit more physicality, a little bit more size, he makes sense. Now, he's extremely raw. And if you're San Antonio, maybe this is like your boom selection here. You went with Keegan Murray, who I think we all know is going to be a good player. Now, this is a guy that maybe, if everything goes right, becomes a star. I don't see that for him. For me, I just don't know if he has enough offensive skill set. But he's going to be pretty switchable defensively. He can protect the rim, probably play some small ball center. And he's very physical and athletic. So there are some things to like here with Tari Eason. I myself am not extremely high on him. I have excluded him from my top 30 big board. And I know that's a really hot take. I just don't believe in it. I'm going to probably die on that hill. Very possible I could be wrong about it. But I still do see a possibility here that he does go in the first round. And I think San Antonio 17th overall would maybe be willing to take that risk. Pick 18, Indiana here. Now, and of course, this pick, it does come from one of their trades with the Cleveland Cavaliers for Karis LeVert. So now 18th overall, they're looking to add a little bit more talent. Remember, they went forward AJ Griffin in the top 6. And now 18th, I have him going with forward Ochai Agbaji from Kansas. Another example here of a good player landing with the Pacers. Last year, they took Chris Duarte, who was the only senior to go in the lottery last year. And some people might be looking at me saying, why isn't Agbaji picked higher? He's had a really good season. Seniors just historically do not get drafted in the lottery, especially in today's modern NBA. There's just a lot of times it doesn't happen. Now, do I think Ochai Agbaji is going to be a good player? Yes. Do I think he's going to have a long career? Yes. Do I see star potential for him? Absolutely not. But what I do see for him is a nice career where he makes an impact. I have compared him to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and I think that's really the best comparison for him. KCP was an extremely athletic guard in college who played really well, played a lot of meaningful minutes in college, and ended up not having quite the NBA career that I think a lot of people projected for him when he was a top 10 pick. Ochai Agbaji here, I think, falls in the similar category. Good college player, maybe not as impactful at the NBA level, but someone who I still think is a nice rotation player, fits in well in Indiana, gives you a little bit more size and length. He can play the 2 or 3. It gives you some flexibility. In Indiana, they get a lot better on their wings in this draft with both AJ Griffin and Ochai Agbaji. Pick 19, we got the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that is a real good feel-good story right now in the NBA. They've been playing really great basketball. Karl Anthony Towns has taken a massive step forward. Of course, had the 60-point night, but I'm talking outside of that even. He's been really good this season, won the three-point contest as well, so a lot of credit to him for his play. Anthony Edwards has really empowered him with the way he spoke about him as well throughout the season. Wolves fans, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then 19th overall here, I have him going with guard Kennedy Chandler out of Tennessee. One thing that's apparent when you look at this team is D'Angelo Russell has great on-off splits, but I don't think it's necessarily just that D'Angelo Russell's super great. I think it's because Jordan McLaughlin off the bench isn't that great. And I think, the team's just way worse when D'Lo's off the floor because they don't have someone getting them into their sets. Kennedy Chandler took the step I needed to see him take when they played Michigan. Even though they lost that game, Tennessee lived because of Kennedy Chandler, and he got to the rim whenever he wanted. At 6 foot, he's a little bit undersized for the point guard spot, but he's got a good wingspan. He's going to be tough defensively. He's going to be pesky, but at the same time, he's going to be able to beat everybody off the dribble. He's extremely quick, and he needs to realize that he needed to turn the corner and start creating for others and getting downhill and scoring the basketball. And he finally did it. I've been waiting for it all year long to see it consistently. He did it against Michigan. I think it's going to be a huge springboard for him to the NBA. And I think if he can continue to play with that drive and aggression, that he becomes an instant upgrade here for Minnesota off the bench, and someone who actually plays really meaningful minutes early in his career. Pick 20, Denver Nuggets here now. Of course, such an injury-riddled season, but Nikola Jokic has kept this thing afloat. And you're going to be looking for another talented shooter around him. I think the obvious thing here with Denver is without Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, this team just doesn't have enough shooting. So you're going with one of the better shooters in the class, forward Patrick Baldwin from Milwaukee. Stands at about 6'10", very similar player to Michael Porter Jr. Now, he doesn't quite have the athletic burst, and isn't quite as skilled as a shooter. I think he's a little bit slower of a release, and probably not as much of a sniper, but he is a sniper still. Watching him play for USA U19 World Cup, he took a backseat role there, which is fine in Denver. It's okay if he takes a backseat role because you're just going to ask him to catch and shoot, and he's going to do that at a really good clip. This is one of those where, hey, last year they hit the nail on the head with the Bones Hyland selection. I told you guys all that last year that I thought Bones Hyland was going to be really good. I had him in my top 15 on my big board. He fell all the way to 26 to them somehow. I still don't understand that, how an NBA GM didn't take him. But forward Patrick Baldwin here, a player who I'm not as high on as the consensus probably, but I do see a fit here with Denver. They just need more shooting, and I think he fits the bill really well for them. Pick 21, you're looking at the Chicago Bulls here, a team that I think just badly needs some backup center play. And this works out really well for them because a player who's playing up his stock a little bit more as we speak throughout the tournament, and the third Duke player I have going off the board, that's center Mark Williams. He is an extremely hard worker, and I think he's a perfect fit here into Chicago because he plays within himself. He's going to play around the rim. He's going to give you some strength and physicality off the bench behind Vooch. He can protect the rim. He can be an anchor a little bit. Now, I'm not sure how ready he's going to be an anchor in the NBA, but 15 minutes a night, very doable right away on day one for Mark Williams. You've got enough playmaking and skill around him where having him on the floor doesn't kill you. And another player who's taken a massive step as a sophomore. I've talked about it multiple times in this video. I love seeing players who go to college, maybe don't have the freshman season they're looking for, and then get way better and take advantage of everything in year two. Mark Williams has done that, and I think as a byproduct here, going in the top 25, it feels almost like a lock now that he's a first-round pick with his play through both the round of 64 and round of 32. He's been really nice this tournament for Duke. He had a really good regular season as well, and this is just, giving validity and validation to his regular season play that he does belong in the top 30 here. I would be shocked if he's not a first-round pick, specifically since I think consensus-wide, he's probably going to be looked at as the third best center in this year's class. Pick 22, we've got the Dallas Mavericks here, a team that I'm a fan of, so I'm a big Mavericks fan. So Mavs fans, if you're new to the channel, make sure to leave a like. Also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more Mavs content. But here at 22nd overall, I have him going with forward Nikola Jovic from Serbia. Goes a little bit lower on my board than I traditionally have had him going. And the reasoning as to why is maybe he's a little bit further away than I had initially anticipated for him being an impact player in the NBA. He's still a little slight, maybe a little bit technically unsound yet at this point, but all the makings are there. He's got good feel as a playmaker. He's got good shooting touch. He's got good driving capabilities and finishing around the rim, even through contact. Now, I think he's got to get a little bit stronger. I think he's got to, sharpen his technique defensively a little bit more, which is why I have him sliding out of the lottery. Whereas I've had him right around that 15 mark all year. I think I have him slide just a little bit more. Guys like Tari Eason, who athletically maybe are going to wow teams a little bit more than Nikola Jovic. I see them moving up. Ousmane Dieng, his potential at 6'10" as a playmaker probably outweighs Nikola Jovic a little bit as well when it comes to draft evaluation. But again, here, I think Dallas is getting a really nice player. Fits their kind of mold here of drafting overseas guys. Now, I know GM Nico Harrison doesn't have that track record yet, but they're not going to let a good player slip, and Jovic, I think, is going to be a nice player in the NBA. 23, we've got San Antonio again. We've already hit the forward spot multiple times, but here I'm going for it again. Forward Kendall Brown, another very Spursy type player. He just plays within a system, plays within himself. Now, he had a really tough March Madness and Baylor got knocked out early. He just didn't have the campaign I was looking for him. Started off the year really well, but didn't take as many steps forward as I would have liked to see. And in fact, kind of played a little hesitant and afraid, it seemed like to me, during March Madness. But at the end of the day, I still do believe in this kid. I pulled him out of the lottery because of that. And I think that he's going to play within the system. He's going to be a nice role player for a team. Now I've got questions about what his upside is going to be. I thought maybe he's a player you could put the ball in his hands a little bit more. But after reevaluating him through the tourney, I'm a little less high on him, but I still do think he's a good player. So the Spurs get Keegan Murray, Tari Eason, and Kendall Brown. So you get a lot of wing versatility and depth. Now, I know Spurs fans are going to say, whoa, we don't need that many wings. You're right, you don't. Probably take a guard in here at some point. I consider Kennedy Chandler instead of Tari Eason, 17th overall. But at the end of the day, I still think the Spurs need some more size and length in their lineups. And I think these three would give them a lot of versatility. These are three really good picks for me. Again, I'm not high on Tari Eason, but I understand why a lot of people are. So if the Spurs come away with these three guys, you're adding three really nice big wings to your roster, and that's a premium in the NBA. It's hard to find good, talented big wings, and they get two guys who I think are really talented right now in Keegan Murray and Kendall Brown, and one who has a lot of potential in Tari Eason. Pick 24, we got the Brooklyn Nets here now at this point. This pick comes from the Sixers in the James Harden trade. And with this pick, I'm going with forward Isaiah Mobley from USC. I see him playing a lot of four. Defensively, he's not the most versatile guy. I probably would see him matching up with bigs defensively, which means he could probably play the five on that end of the floor. And the nice thing here, and part of why I'm projecting this, is I'm looking for the Nets to get more shooting, specifically from their bigs, so that Ben Simmons becomes more playable in the playoffs. You try and open up the lane a little bit more, open up some driving lanes, give him some kick opportunities. And Isaiah Mobley, who's a junior at USC right now, is a career 38% three-point shooter. So even though they got bounced early to Miami, I still do think that Isaiah Mobley is a nice prospect. I think he's worthy of a first-round pick. Now, it's possible he doesn't go in the first round. I think he's a top 40 lock. I'd be shocked if he doesn't go in the top 40, but Isaiah Mobley here, 24th overall. This is an example here of maybe you don't need to draft the highest upside guy, but you need to draft as someone who fits along your roster and gives you some long-term mobility and flexibility at that big man position. And this is perfect for Brooklyn. Pick 25, we've got the Memphis Grizzlies here now. This pick comes from the Utah Jazz from the Mike Conley trade. And with this selection, I'm going to have them go with guard/forward Ron Harper Jr. from Rutgers. Remember earlier on, I had him take another player who could help him defensively in EJ Liddell, and you get a guard/wing here in Ron Harper Jr. who can do that too. He's very big, about 245 pounds, so I think he's a little overweight even, I would say. I think if he sheds about 5 to 10 pounds and then puts that into muscle, he probably becomes a way better player than he currently is. He's a senior from Rutgers, and I do really like this kid. He's son of former NBA champion Ron Harper, and I think he's going to have a nice impact in the NBA. Kind of reminds me of Dillon Brooks in a lot of ways. He's a tough shot maker. He's willing to take those tough shots, and he's very competitive defensively. And again, if you're going to really buy into the Jaren Jackson center spot, you play EJ Liddell as a 4. You give Ron Harper Jr. some run on the wing, and you have some nice size and physicality. These two can help rebound the basketball next to Jaren Jackson, which has been kind of his one bugaboo. Even this season a little bit, doesn't rebound the ball as well as most bigs. So you get some bigger players around him in Liddell. Ron Harper gives you some more flexibility and gives you also a little bit of leverage in contract extension talks with Dillon Brooks. I'm sure they would love to have him back, but with the emergence of Desmond Bane, the eventual hope for Zaire Williams to become a star, I mean, you know, there's some realistic possibilities here that Dillon Brooks doesn't stick with Memphis for a long time after this season. Pick 26, the Milwaukee Bucks here now at this spot in the draft. I'm looking for a player who can replace Dante DiVincenzo and give them a little bit of long-term upside. And for me, that's guard Max Christie from Michigan State. He's actually got some pretty good length to him. And then he's also a very talented player in terms of, you know, he's fundamentally sound. He's going to make the right play consistently, which I think is huge for Milwaukee while they're in pursuit of a championship. But there's some upside here as well. He's shown some creation potential. He's flashed in certain areas. that I think that he could sell a team. Even though he averaged less than 10 points a game this year on non-super efficient shooting, I still see him as a first-round guy because of his length and his skill set. And I think that if you're Milwaukee here, to get a guy like Christie definitely makes a lot of sense. They need more guard depth, specifically at the 2 spot. And I think Christie does give them that flexibility. Pick 27, Golden State here now on the board. And for me with the Warriors, I'm looking for a few things. Specifically here at this spot, I'm going to go with forward MarJon Beauchamp, who has some serious upside. You know, they have Jonathan Kuminga. They've got James Wiseman. They've got Moses Moody. You add to that here with another talented wing. Beauchamp's had a really good season this year for G League Ignite. He's a little bit older than the other G League Ignite guys, though, which is why I'm not having him in the lottery compared to where a lot of people have him. He's older than people think. Just because you're new to the name MarJon Beauchamp doesn't mean he's a fresh 19-year-old. Okay, he's a little bit older than that. And for me here with Golden State, you get a nice player who has some upside. His trajectory into the NBA has been really good. He has improved a ton from where he was coming out of high school to where he's currently at now. And I think Golden State, you add another nice wing player in, gives you some more depth and flexibility. I still think that they could use another guard as well, but it has thinned out a little bit here. I did consider Jean Montero from Overtime Elite, but I think Beauchamp probably the safer selection here at this spot. Pick 28, Miami Heat here now on the board, and I have them going with forward Julian Strawther from Gonzaga, a player who, again, has taken a massive jump as a sophomore, went from starting 0 games last year as a freshman for Gonzaga to being a lock in the starting lineup for Gonzaga this season. He's been huge. He's projected to be a nice 3-and-D wing, got some pretty good length and size. Now, he's not going to blow you away physically, but he's solid. And the thing here with Julian Strawther, maybe this isn't the highest upside pick, but if you're Miami, you're looking just for a wing contributor. And I think Strawther's the perfect example of that there. He's just going to be in the right spot at the right time. Anyone who watches Gonzaga plays, it just seems like when Gonzaga needs something to go right, Julian Strawther finds a backdoor cut for 2 points, or hits a nice catch and shoot 3, or gets a stop on the defensive end of the floor. He just is very solid. And for me, I know it doesn't sound like, oh, well, this is a great pick. It is. It's a very good pick because Miami, they do a great job finding guards. I really like Vincent and Strus, who they found. But I think that they could use a little bit more wing depth, and Strawther here fits the bill for that. You could also consider some centers, but the center class has thinned out a little bit. And I just quite frankly don't view Ariel Huck-Porty as a first-round level center. Pick 29, Memphis Grizzlies here. Their third pick in the first round, we went with Liddell and also Ron Harper Jr. And now here, 29th overall, we're going to go for some long-term upside here, and that's Blake Wesley. We got 2 really good players who can help us win right now. To have 3 first-round picks, if you're Memphis, is insane. They could probably make a consolidation trade and move 1, 2, or all 3 of the picks if they really wanted to. But Blake Wesley here out of Notre Dame, this kid's got some serious upside. He's a freshman who loves to score the ball, has a competitive edge to him, loves to get to the rim. He's going to be liable to some really bad shooting nights. That's kind of the bugaboo on him. But if you're Memphis here, you probably stick him with the Memphis hustle for a while, let him work his way up in the G League. You don't need him to be a high contributor early. You got Tyus Jones still off the bench. But I think 2 or 3 years from now could end up being a very nice guard play and someone who gives you some real bench scoring, which I think the Grizzlies could use a little bit of that punch moving forward. Just looking at, they're going to have some tough decisions to make on their roster in terms of who they keep, who they lose because of salary cap implications. Blake Wesley, a phenomenal pickup here again for them. I think that they killed this draft if they end up with Liddell, Harper Jr., and Wesley. That's a really good trio of players who not only help you win now, but there's also some long-term upside here with the Wesley selection. And then the final pick here of the first round, again, if you guys have enjoyed up to this point, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And we've got the Oklahoma City Thunder here. This pick comes from the Phoenix Suns in the Chris Paul trade. The Suns absolutely won that trade, by the way. But here's Sam Presti. He's already grabbed, at this point, Paolo Banchero, was able to grab Ousmane Dieng. And now at this spot, I have him going with a center, Travion Williams from Purdue. I don't think Travion Williams is necessarily worthy of a first-round selection, but I'm following the train of thought here that, hey, we're going to go hyper playmaking here in Oklahoma City. We're going to get a lot of guys who can move the ball, pass it really well. And also this gives you a little bit of scoring punch at the center spot. There is no denying that Oklahoma City needs to take a center or needs to find a center at some point. Now, I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do it. Maybe they make a run at DeAndre Ayton in restricted free agency and put some pressure on Phoenix. that's a possibility. But Travion Williams here, this is an example of need over value. At this spot, they need a big. They need someone who can battle. He's got a nice right baby hook, really good passer out of the post. I don't love this selection, but I do love Travion Williams as a player. And I think that 30th overall, probably a little too high for him. Probably not a first-round level player. But again, it is the last pick of the first round. So I do think there is some legitimacy here to Oklahoma City really considering a center at this spot, especially after going Banchero and Zhang so far up to this point. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. You guys know what to do at this point. Leave a like, subscribe. Also, comment your thoughts on the video. Let me know what you disagree with, what you agree with, what you liked, what you didn't. I appreciate reading all the comments. Still go take my time and read through everything. So again, hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.